if we've taught someone for the last 19 years, oh, we're good. Oh, we have no needs. Oh, we don't need any help. What are they going to do in year 19 when we're going through a crisis? So today's episode is centered more around what it was like when people actually tried to communicate healthily with me, because that was one of the places that I left off in that last video. And I wanted to talk about the myth of when other attachment style platforms kind of put the burden on the partner of the fearful avoidant, the friend, the family member, whoever it is of the fearful avoidant, to be the one that's showing up, communicating healthily. Across the board, you want to do that with anyone, any attachment style. But I wanted to sort of relieve you, if you are that person, of the burden to feel like it's your sole responsibility to have to do that. And I wanted to give you some more reasons about why and what actually happens when you try to communicate healthily with a fearful avoidant. And the one main thing I want to say, and I hope that you hear me saying this sort of like as a asterisk and subtext every time I talk about the fearful avoidant in this video. This is a fearful avoidant who is unhealed and not willing or not able to do the work to heal their own attachment style. Fearful avoidants, like myself, many of us who are seeing what our patterns are, really showing up, really trying to change things. We're not going to be perfect. That's not those. And so learning how to differentiate between a fearful avoidant who is trying to heal and showing up and putting in effort is going to be tantamount to knowing whether you should continue showing up for that person as well. And I can make a video about how to tell the difference between an unhealed fearful avoidant or a fearful avoidant who is trying to show up and do the work. So, with that being said, let's get started. The examples I wanted to give today actually center around someone who's very special to me, my best friend of 23 years now. We met when I was 11, she was 12, and we have been friends for most of that time. There were a couple years where we went to different high schools and kind of lost contact, but other than that, we've been pretty invested in each other's lives, even though we've actually lived most of our friendship long distance. Grew up together in the Bronx. I went to central New York when I was starting my 20s, and she actually went to Florida for a little while, so we were super far apart. And she went back to New York City. I stayed in central New York, and then eventually I moved to North Carolina. So we still live pretty far from each other, but we are very connected, especially in the last 2 years since I've been doing the work. But today's conversation is going to center around what it was like starting 2 years ago and the years before that. So for the first 21 years of our friendship. And so a couple of stories to help kind of paint the picture is, number one, the reason I chose this person is because my best friend has been, for as long as I can remember, now that I understand patterns and know the language and the behaviors of different attachment styles, she has been securely attached for the entire time I've known her. But one of the major myths that I also want to dispel here, that might actually be like maybe not explicitly said, but sometimes implied or sometimes we think, is securely attached people are not perfect people. So that is one of the major things to think about. I think when these other platforms talk about an attachment style getting with a securely attached person, and that the success rate is going to be like astronomically higher because you have a person who's like communicating healthier, showing up healthier. That's not true, because securely attached people do not play the same games or understand the same languages, so to speak, as the insecure attachment styles. So if you are an extreme individual on one of the insecure attachment styles, you are not going to feel good and safe and comfortable with a person who is securely attached if they are really rooted and anchored in that attachment style. And part of the reason for that is, like I mentioned, securely attached people are not perfect. They make mistakes. They are going to stumble. They're going to say things that hurt you, offend you, make you really, really angry. And because they're not playing by the same rules that you're playing by, you are going to not know even what to do with them. And so that is the friendship that I had with my best friend for 21 years, prior to 2 years ago. So, one of the very smallest first examples of this is actually when we were in middle school. And I still think about this still today because it is such a perfect example. And um, what it was is that my best friend, um, when we were kids, she carried these like this cute little pouch of things that like she might need. And one of those things was a hairbrush. And so, you go to gym class, you go to whatever thing we might be doing, and maybe you get some flyaways. And then she had straight hair, and she would brush her hair and maybe put it back in a ponytail or whatever, or put like a hairpin in the side. And so I remember people asking her to use this hairbrush, and she would more often than not, I don't know if I remember her saying yes to anybody to use the hairbrush. And she was very particular about the use of this hairbrush. And I was one of those people. And where it stuck out for me is because my best friend and I, we actually were really, really close in middle school. And we did lots of things. Like, she literally taught me how to ride a bicycle. Like, if you can imagine that. And so at like 12 years old or something, she taught me how to ride a bike. We went to her house like almost every day after school for a long time. We played basketball. She taught me how to throw a baseball. I'd never even touched a baseball before I met her. And she would make me sandwiches every day after school. I mean, this girl like showed up for me as a friend. And so I remember it standing out to me clear as day one time when I asked her to use the hairbrush, and she also declined for me. And so I remember thinking, and if you are a fearful avoidant yourself, I should have also welcomed you to this video, and to say that my purpose in this video is that you can relate to some of this, hear yourself in some of this, and know that there is a way out as well. And so why I preface that before what I'm about to say is because I'm sure you can relate to this, is I felt like I guess we're not as close as I thought we were. And I felt so hurt that she wouldn't allow me to use her hairbrush. And it stuck with me for a long time. And what it caused me to do and to want to do was like pull away a little bit, or try to make it so that I, in some way, let her know that she couldn't hurt me. And it's interesting, like, I felt myself emotionally like drawing some walls. But to keep this moving, I'll move on to the second example, and then I'll kind of tell you what my internal environment was more like as we progress. So, the second thing is actually quite a bit more recently. These are not necessarily in chronological order, but I'll tell you when they happened. So, the second one was just 2 years ago, about a little over 2 years ago now. This is really, really early in my healing. So a lot of things hadn't myelinated yet. I was still learning like language and just like how I showed up in the world and what triggers I had was brand new to all of that. But I was starting to have some of that awareness. And that's actually what helped me to work through this problem. So her family was planning a trip to the Dominican Republic. Those are their roots. That's where they're from. And I think I said I'd like to go. And again, that you may be like, why would you invite yourself on this family trip? Well, this is a family at this point I've known for 21 years. And that's the funny thing about being fearful avoidant too. You have the data that shows you that this person wants you in their life, that this person has, oh, oh, how exciting. Oh, I have a hibiscus flower outside and there's a hummingbird. Oh, how do they always know when you pick up your phone to record? That was so cool. Oh my God, there was a little hummingbird that was getting at the hibiscus. I've never seen a bird actually come onto my balcony. How wonderful was that? Okay, sorry, back to the regularly scheduled program. So, this is a family that I've known for 21 years. And like I was mentioning, a fearful avoidant, a lot of the time, if they are in a safe relationship like this, they have the data. Sorry, I noticed myself. I'm still looking out there. I'm going to focus, I'm going to lock in. And they have the data to be able to say that this is a good friend to me. Like I said, even when I was in middle school, she was making me the food, including me in her life, teaching me how to ride the bike, all of these things. And I still was like, she didn't loan me her hairbrush. Okay, I guess she doesn't give a crap about me. It's extreme. It's really extreme. And so, same thing. I am living my life 2 years ago. she's talking about how her family's going to the Dominican Republic. I mentioned, because I'm trying to be more vulnerable, I at least was there to try that. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'd like to go. And then she's like, okay, yeah, that would be great. She's like, but I'm not sure how it's going to work. And she's like, I got to find out where we're staying. I have to find out. I think there's going to be enough room, but I'm not sure. And so I was trying to suggest to her, like, I don't mind getting my own Airbnb if there's no room in the place that you guys are staying. And she's like, yeah, I get you. But she's like, I don't know if my dad is going to be okay if you stay somewhere else. So if there's no room, I'm not sure if he's going to be like, okay with you coming. And so all of the stuff, I'm trying to like say these things in like a neutral tone so that I don't convey like any tone really, I guess, because this was all happening over text message. And I tried to look for the text messages, and I got to where we were talking about the DR trip, but I in my brief looking couldn't find the verbatim language about it. But that was the gist of it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, she doesn't want me to go, and she's making up these excuses, and I wish she would just tell me, like, oh, hey, I don't think it would be a good idea, or something like that. I mean, like, yeah, it would hurt, but it would feel better than this uncertainty. And that's another thing for fearful avoidance too. Oh my gosh, we hate uncertainty. We hate it so much. And so I think because fearful avoidants do see themselves as like resilient and like adventurous and outgoing sometimes and move through really, really difficult situations, I know for me, it was quite a surprise to learn that certainty was so important for me in my life, especially in relationships. And so that was going on in my internal environment, and I was just getting so hurt and kind of mad and thinking to myself, like, I wish she would just tell me that, like, she didn't want me to come. And fast forward, what I started to realize was exactly what she was saying is exactly what she was thinking and feeling and what the reality was. And so when I did end up going on the trip, there was a place for me. We actually shared a bed. She swapped her husband to share a bed with someone else and like another one of her family members, and ended up sharing a bed with me during this trip. I mean, this person has, like I said, shown me many examples, so much data for how they have cared for me in our lives. And again, this doesn't make her perfect, and it does not make securely attached people perfect. However, they are solid. They are solid, and they will show you that they love you and care for you in their life if they are in a relationship with you of any kind. And so that happened. And how I started to realize this was as the plans continued, I was trying to keep myself regulated. And again, it's because I was beginning the process of being that working toward healing fearful avoidance. So if this wasn't the case, I would certainly not have even been able to do this, like stick around, hang in there, stay present with my feelings. And again, even as I started the beginning of that healing process, I was still feeling that in my internal environment, that I was unwanted and maybe even being lied to, right? That she was being dishonest with me. And as I watched the process unfold, I found out that, yeah, her dad, he grew up in the area that we were going into. It's really, really hard to get around it. It's a countryside of the Dominican Republic. They had rented like a small bus that everyone stayed in the entire trip. And it was convenient for them to get to and from places because everyone was in one central location, and things are far out. Like everything that we went to was minimum an hour drive away. And because, like I said, it's just in this remote place in Dominican Republic, it wasn't in a situation where like, oh, you get this one Airbnb and then I'll get an Airbnb that's like 3 or 4 blocks away. There are no blocks. It's like farmland everywhere. And so that's where she was coming from. That's the information that she had. And granted, it is good to, again, provide that certainty for your fearful avoidant. But in her mind, after 21 years, she assumes that I know that she wants me in her life. So she's not even thinking like, I have to provide Sarah with this certainty. And she doesn't know to do that because, number one, that's not in her needs. She doesn't need that because she has that trust for me. And if she did need that, guess what she would do? She would ask for it. And so I didn't know how to ask for that because I'm just thinking in my mind, she's like not telling me the truth. She doesn't actually want me to come. So I can't even do the things like, hey, I'm feeling a little like a bit of that uncertainty. Could you help me understand like what you're hesitant about? Or like paint me the picture of like what it would look like realistically. And it was just like I was not able to do that, and she doesn't know that I need that. And so it was like kind of a mess in my like spirit and my body for a couple of weeks until I kind of watched it unfold and saw what happened. And luckily, because she is a stand-up friend, was able to eventually communicate that to me and let me know how I could be accommodated to be a part of this trip. And I went and we had a lovely time. We were super connected. That was the first hug I had gotten after my ex-husband and I initiated our separation. It took me 3 months to see someone that I was really close to and have that affection. And she recorded me like, and no one has ever done this for me. Like, I felt like I'd never been in a situation where anyone made a fuss about me showing up to anything anywhere. And so she recorded me as I walked out of the airport. They got there before me. And so there's like footage of me walking onto the ground of the Dominican Republic for the first time. And I mean, this is a person again who has just shown me such love and warmth in my life. And as a fearful avoidant, these are some of the things I was still thinking about her. And so let me tell you the last story and then I'll talk about like what we can do about it and just like a little bit of a reality check, to be honest. The last one is a little bit darker and sadder. And so I consider 2021 one of the worst years of my life, if not the worst. I just went through so much that year and I've talked about it in other episodes. But the short story is one of the major things I had gone through in my life was a miscarriage, and I had graduated that year. And you think, well, graduation's a really great thing. It is, but there was a lot of stress around my graduation in particular. So I'll just leave it at that. And one of the things that I expected was people to show up for me in my life who I told what I was going through. And I didn't have a lot of people in my life at that point. My best friend was still in my life, of course, at that point. So she was one of the people that I told. And being a fearful avoidant, we are the masters of legally binding covert contracts. And for basically a good majority of our friendship, I had engaged in covert contracts with my best friend. And so, what I mean by that in reality is that I felt like, and I felt like this in pretty much every one of my relationships, is that I had to earn my worth. I had to be valuable or provide some sort of commodity to the person that I was with for me to feel safe in whatever relationship that was. And with her, it was all sorts of things because we had just been in a relationship for so long. And one of the ways that I showed up for her, and that's the other thing about fearful avoidance too, is we tend to just have a generous spirit. We do have a generous spirit, but the problem with our generosity is that we overgive and then we expect things in return without saying what we expect. And that's where the trouble starts. Being generous is beautiful, but being generous outside of your means is is a recipe for a disaster. And that's what I did. She went to school for many years to get a master's degree. She's a speech pathologist. She's awesome at what she does and really, really pursued that degree hard and did very, very well to complete and then start working in her field. And one of the things that she asked for my help with throughout her schooling was to proofread her papers. And so I didn't know anything about speech pathology, which was nice because I got to like learn just by reading her papers some of the things that like um, speech pathologists have to learn with children. She wanted to focus on children, especially specifically as well. So I got to learn like about some childhood development and things like that. But she called on me to proofread a lot of her papers. I was pretty good at grammar and stuff growing up. She knew that. And that's why she asked me to help her in those ways. And so I proofread thousands of lines of text over the course of her schooling, and I was very happy to do it. But that was one of the things. When she graduated, I sent her like a care package when she was going through different things in her life that I felt like were either challenging or celebration, did the same thing. And what I expected when I was going through my miscarriage was the same thing in return. I expected a care package. I expected like someone to show up and say like, here's something that I thought of for you, and that would make you feel better. And I didn't get any of that. And if you're thinking to yourself and having sympathy for me, first of all, thank you. But that's the thing about it, right? If we have taught someone, which we do as fearful avoidants, at that point it would have been like 19 years of friendship. If we've taught someone for the last 19 years, oh, we're good. Oh, we have no needs. Oh, we don't need any help. What are they going to do in year 19 when we're going through a crisis? When we withdraw and shut down whenever we're in pain, they're going to give us space because they think that's what we need. And that's what she did. She checked in on me via text message every once in a while. And granted, when I was down in New York City in her area, I always made time to go see her. But outside of physical connection, a couple of times a year, I wasn't really much of a communicator. We didn't talk on the phone hardly at all. Our friendship in the first 21 years is very different than it has been in the last 2 years. Um, as a result of me communicating my needs, saying, hey, I do want more connection. I love you in my life and I want to get to know you better and I want to grow more with you. Those are all things that we have been able to do together in the last 2 years as a result of me healing and saying, I want our relationship to change. But before that, it was very, very much me doing things for her, expecting things in return, turning things down or saying no or assuming negative things of her, and then going, why isn't she showing up for me? And so it was actually the first disagreement that we ever had in our friendship. Was I loaded this text message of resentment that I had stored up toward her over the last really kind of 19 years that culminated in 2021 being a really difficult year for me and her not showing up and being there for me. And she, like most people are when fearful avoidance explode on them, was completely shocked. She totally did not see that coming. And we worked it out. And that's a story and a video for a different day. But we were able to work it out, thank God, because I didn't even know I was fearful avoidant back then. And she took her space. She communicated what she needed during that time and was like, I need to process this. I need to talk this over with some people in my life. And we were able to continue our friendship after that. But all of those things to say is that that is how I lived in that relationship with her, was through covert contracts, resentment, not communicating anything, feeling resentful when she set a boundary with me or communicated to me her uncertainty, feeling like I wasn't wanted or there was something she wasn't telling me, because those are the types of things I assumed that I would do if I didn't want someone around in my life, because I didn't know how to communicate directly and I didn't know how to set boundaries. And so, what do I want to conclude after those stories? I know that was like rapid fire, and I wanted to use that relationship specifically, not only because my best friend was securely attached, but also because that was a relationship that I should have felt safe in, right? Like, I had been in that relationship longer than I had been in any other relationship in my life, barring the people that I was related to. And so, you would have thought that over that many years, just by being in a relationship with a securely attached person, I would have known, okay, this person has shown up for me in all of these ways. I'm safe. I'm good. And even just 2 years ago, after 21 years of friendship, I was still making these negative assumptions about this person not even liking me. And so, where do we go from there? Number one, it is not your responsibility to heal them or solve things for them if you are not the fearful avoidant. It's not your responsibility. Please, please, please take that burden off yourself. And it's not even just like about you like not using your energy in a certain way, or you not feeling like you should be obligated to do that, it's simply not going to work. It's not even going to work. So it's not like if you train for this marathon, then you're going to get to the day where you can actually run the marathon and then cross the finish line. This is not that. You cannot do enough. You cannot do enough. It doesn't matter how hard you trained for this marathon. If we pretend that trying to heal a fearful avoidant externally, like as someone who loves them, was training for a marathon, it would be like you trained for a marathon and you never got to cross the finish line. And maybe the day of the marathon didn't even ever come. That's what it's like. I think I was such a like Greek mythology obsessed kid, but it's been so long that I'm like forgetting a lot of the names now. I think it's like Psyche, who was in love with Eros or Cupid, and Cupid's mom, Aphrodite, didn't want them to be in a relationship, so she gave her all these tasks, and she was like picking up like grains of sand or something or whatever it was, and they were like infinite. Or the guy who rolls the boulder up the hill, who's that, Sisyphus? Yeah, that's what it's like. It is a Greek tragedy. In real life, it is a modern day, wherever location you are, tragedy to try to heal a fearful avoidant. It's simply not going to happen. So please relieve yourself of this impossible task, because there was nothing that she could say or do to make me get it, and there's nothing you can say or do to make them get it. Consequences are the only things that we understand. And feeling like someone can relate to us who is not also triggering us is the only thing that can help us. So like watching this video, when I watched videos where I heard things about what it was like to be a fearful avoidant, then I was able to go, oh, I feel safe. I relate to that. That person's not attacking me. They actually went through it too. That is what caused me to change. But I had to want to. I had to want to. And that's the second thing, is like that is what it causes a fearful avoidant. That's what causes a fearful avoidant to change, is learning that I was a fearful avoidant and actually using the tools. So awareness is big and awareness is great. It's what helped me get through the Dominican Republic trip planning situation and just observe that I was getting really, really triggered and sticking around for the plot and not like burning things to the ground like I would have in the past. That is what started to actually like help me to be able to do the tools, and then working the tools got me to the place where right now I feel so safe with and so aware of the love and support and devotion and deep connection that I have with my best friend of 23 years. And it's crazy, I feel like I've had relationships, and I hear a lot about relationships that are solid and they kind of stay solid in friendships, or they're really close and then they grow apart. And maybe they're still friends, but they're not like super deep as they used to be when they were kind of in proximity. I've not really seen situations where friends are like rebuilding and connecting in a deeper way than they ever have for the first like majority of their friendship, if many years have passed of the friendship. So I feel so lucky and so special to be a part of this with my securely attached best friend. And the last thing is, I will say, be all the things that you want the fearful avoidant to be. Be all the things that I was saying that I couldn't be in those past years. If you are wanting to get the fearful avoidance attention, if you are wanting to make progress with them, you still have to show up and not be perfect, but do your best to communicate clearly, set boundaries. Set boundaries. When I wrote my best friend that wall of text of grievances I had with her, she set a boundary. She said, whoa, I need some time to step back and think about what you just said to me, which was the communication. And then it was also like, give me a month. She set a boundary of no contact between us. And even though I didn't know that I was fearful avoidant back then, I at least knew enough to know that I loved her and I wasn't ready to quit on our relationship. So if your fearful avoidant gives you that, you got that going for you. But if you set that boundary, it will reveal how that person can handle and tolerate your boundaries as well. So let your communication that's healthy trigger them. Let it trigger them. You want to expose whether this person can show up. You don't want to start molding yourself and playing by their rules, because then nobody wins. Nobody wins. So communicate clearly. Let them be triggered and upset by your communication. Set the boundaries. Let them be upset and triggered by your boundaries. Or in both those situations, let the clear communication, if they are able and willing to see it, if they are someone who's starting to heal or has the potential to heal, that's going to reveal that to you too. That clear communication is going to make them feel safe. The boundary setting is going to make them feel safe. So you're never going to go wrong with clear communication and setting boundaries. And last but not least, be ready and willing to walk away. Be ready and willing to walk away. Set a deadline for yourself for how much you feel like the friendship is like a good match, for how much longer you want to stay, and try to communicate and set those boundaries and see what evidence comes out of it. Maybe they are healing, and maybe they have the potential to heal, and they are actually starting to show up. That time is going to be you watching very, very closely how they're showing up and doing that. And the last thing I will say is that this is not for fearful avoidants who are being abusive or anything like that. Again, that is very, very direct evidence that they are unhealed and that they're not willing and ready to do the work. And that is one of the reasons you think to yourself, like, well, why did my best friend put up with me for 21 years if I was doing and feeling all these things? Well, it's because I was doing most of that and feeling most of that in my internal environment. But as soon as I brought it out into the open and wrote her that wall of text, then she followed that protocol. She communicated clearly, she set those boundaries, and I'm sure she was willing to walk away if I was not able to come to an agreement with her. And I've seen her do that in the past to people who were treating her unhealthily. But she took a chance because she'd seen me love on her for 19 years at that point as well. And she did not keep me around with abusive behavior or emotionally immature behavior. She was very, very, she hit the brakes really, really hard when I did that. And you have to be willing to do that too. So that is it for today. Hope you found this helpful. Please let me know in the comments if there are other situations you want to know how I handled, or like what it was like for me to be as a fearful avoidant. And I will definitely be posting more videos like this, so you can either, as the fearful avoidant, find ways that you relate, and a little bit of tough love here, because we do have a responsibility as people in relationships on this planet to show up healthily. And maybe we didn't get that modeling toward us when we were kids, but it is our responsibility, if we want to stop perpetuating the pain in our lives, to treat people in our lives well and with respect, and to also be the clear communicators, the boundary setters, and be willing to walk away from people who may not be fearful avoidant, but may have other unhealthy behaviors that are a detriment to our mental well-being. So I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for listening.